Hi, I'm Chris Casteel on the Washington Bureau of the Oklahoman. It was a year ago this week that Congress was confronted with a tough choice. Give the Treasury Department $700 billion with almost no strings attached, or, according to former Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson, there would be financial Armageddon. The U.S. House went first, voting on a bill on Monday, September 29th while the world watched. The bill failed, and the world watched the stock market plunge. On that first vote, 3 of the 5 House members from Oklahoma voted against the bailout. In the ensuing days, the Oklahoma lawmakers were torn between a populist outcry against bailing out Wall Street and intense pressure from some of the largest private employers in their districts who are having trouble getting credit and doing business. 4 days later, on October 3rd, the House voted again, and this time the bill passed. Republican Congresswoman Mary Fallon was one of those who changed her vote and supported the bailout.
Well, the TARP vote was certainly one of the toughest votes I've ever had to make, and many of us here in Congress. Who knows what would have happened in our financial system if we hadn't had intervened at a time when we were being told that we could have one of the toughest recessions since the 1930s, maybe even possibly a depression. You know, my biggest concern was to make sure that our financial system was working, that people would have access to their bank accounts, their ATM machines, that we could stop the bleeding on the pension funds, the 401ks, the retirement of our citizens, that people could access their bank accounts and their banks, and even more importantly that our businesses across Oklahoma were telling me that they were having trouble accessing capital and were having trouble making even payroll to our employees in Oklahoma. So it was certainly one of the toughest votes I've ever had to make. At the time, listening to all the experts around our nation, I felt that it was the prudent thing to do was to take action to make sure that we could stop any potential collapse of our financial institutions in our nation.
It was a tough vote politically to support the bailout, particularly for free market conservatives. But Republican Congressman Tom Cole said he thought it was necessary and that Congress did the right thing.
I do think Congress did the right thing. Frankly, I think we would have had a tremendous economic calamity. I think Congress prevented what's a very bad recession from becoming a depression. So having said that, I think the administrations of both parties did the wrong thing. Congress envisioned that it would put money in the banking system and be paid back, and indeed billions of dollars have come back, and to date we've actually made a profit on the transaction. The administration, first the Bush administration, then the Obama administration, expanded this into other areas, bailing out the car companies, for instance, that Congress never envisioned. The Obama administration is trying to recycle the money, use it over and over instead of use it to pay back the debt, which again is what Congress envisioned. So I think the executive branch went too far. I think Congress in a crisis situation actually did the right thing and saved thousands of jobs and businesses in this country.
But 2 Republican members of the Oklahoma delegation were never persuaded. Senator Jim Inhofe and Congressman Frank Lucas said there were never any clear assurances in the legislation about how the money would be spent.
Knowing what I knew at the time, I cast the right vote. Looking back upon it now a year later, I still cast the right vote. Spending $700 billion of taxpayers' monies differently ultimately than the way the bill was promised when it was passed is not the right way to address the problem.
I was pretty outspoken at the time. Never in the history of this country have we given a large block of money to an unelected bureaucrat to do with as he wished. I pointed out that if on the $700 billion bailout document, there is nothing that forced them to spend it in certain areas. They promised it was all going to be spent to buy damaged assets. Not one nickel was used to buy damaged assets. Now, what makes it even worse is that if it was used in some area where money was paid back, that money would not go for debt reduction or even to the general fund. It goes to give more headroom, as they say, to give more money to groups. When you look at the groups that they gave money to, the auto bailout, the AIG, people were outraged. I know in my meetings in Oklahoma, people just said, "How could we give money away?" Well, we gave it $700 billion to an unelected bureaucrat, and we said, "Do what you want with it."
We'll never know what would have happened if Congress hadn't approved the money for the banks. It may always be a controversial chapter in American history. But Congressman Dan Bourne is sure that, even though the economy is still struggling today, the pain would have been much more widespread without the unprecedented government intervention we saw 1 year ago.
I think it was absolutely necessary. You look at where we are today, markets are stabilizing, the stock market's almost 10,000, retail sales numbers are up, home starts are up. We're not out of the woods yet, but if we had not done some of these drastic measures, you could see unemployment at 20%, you could see us losing a lot more of our banks, and at the end of the day, the taxpayers may make a profit on this. I think most people see this as money that went out the door that will never come back. We're already seeing money come back as we speak. Sometimes 17% return on our money. That's a lot better than you can do in a CD. So taxpayers may end up benefiting even more than we think.